to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with your host, Buddy Sotelo Esquire, Evan Ginsberg, and Dr. Mike Leno. So, would you like to introduce tonight's guest?
Of course. I was the one that contacted him after seeing Collector's Call. It's on every Sunday, 6:30 Pacific, 9:30 Eastern on MeTV, which is a great channel. They're adding four new shows to their blockbuster lineup, but Collector's Call is one of my favorite because we all, at least those of us on this show, are all collectors in our own way. And Joe Salg he does a number of things. He takes care of patients as a mental health and sex therapist, mental health counselor, does many, many things. But he has put together a museum par excellence for Cyndi Lauper, who we all love and respect. Evan and I will talk about our interview with her from, I don't know how many years ago, Evan. That was like 20 years ago at
Yeah,
the
late 50s.
at the
Yes.
Virgin Megastore opening on Market Street at Stockton in San Francisco, which was a huge deal because Cyndi was to perform there, but we got there early. We'll talk about that later. But Joe, tell us about, the number of items you have is amazing. Outfits she's worn, performed in. One of the absolute nicest, down to earth people. We can get into that. But how did you, well, tell us how you became a fan of hers and how you approached her, how you did all of the things you've done and put together and into one amazing place that everybody around the world should be visiting.
Thanks. It's one of those things in life that you just really put the time in hour by hour, which turns into hundreds of hours, which turns into thousands of hours. And then this project is bigger than I ever expected. So, in 83, 84, when Cyndi broke the scene, I was 14. I was just starting to listen to the radio. And I always tell people that I didn't like her first hit. In fact, I was kind of sick of it. And I was like, God, this girl with that voice, it's too much. And then Time After Time came out. I immediately changed my opinion, and I've been hooked ever since. So I started collecting, LPs, singles, posters, everything you could get in the 80s. And then with the internet, you start to reach out and see who has been holding on to things. And so eBay has helped a lot. And it was always just for my own personal enjoyment. I had one room, I called it the Shrine. And then social media came about, and I started contacting people in the circles, the music industry, Cyndi herself. And it just got bigger and bigger. I branded it as the Cyndi Lauper Museum, and she knows about it. She's not involved in any way, but we've done some trades, and it is the unofficial Cyndi Lauper Museum because she has not been here yet. But she knows all about it, and it is a pretty extensive situation. It is the biggest Cyndi Lauper collection in the world. Not that I have a lot of competitors, but there are some really fun, rabid fans out there who are collecting. But as far as the big items, I'm definitely the guy to talk to. And that's how this has gotten bigger and bigger. People will start to reach out to me and say, hey, I have some things that you might be interested in. I got on the radar for Collector's Call by kind of nagging them to have me on the show. And they finally gave in, and they wanted to come down to Florida. I'm in Orlando, Florida. And it was just a matter of time before they could put together other collections in the Central Florida area. And I have to say, I had a great time working with that crew. So professional. And it's a big honor to be featured on a TV show like that.
There have been some huge people. I mean, Lisa Welchel from Facts of Life, Blair on Facts of Life is the host. She's been the original host. And you would not, when I first caught the show, when it first debuted, you wouldn't think that she would be a good fit, but she's a perfect fit, and she puts people at ease and makes the show flow. And it's impressive, your museum, because a lot of museums, there's very few, to my knowledge, where somebody's still in the prime of their life and still performing, even though she's been kind of winding it down, tour-wise, etc. There's Lucille Ball, this and that, and comedy museums, but it's kind of unique. I don't know if there's like a Bruce Springsteen, somebody's doing similar to that. And is this in your home? Did you start there, or do you have a dedicated place separate from your home, or what is it?
Well, it started as the room, and then it was 3 rooms, and now it's the entire house. The only thing I have left for myself is the kitchen, and I don't cook, and my bedroom. So I always joke and say Cyndi lives here, and I just like get to hang out. It's a pretty extensive collection. So you were mentioning, some of these collections featured on Collector's Call. They're typically not being featured unless we have thousands of items, and I haven't added it up. It is cataloged and it is insured, but I actually have never added it up. It's in the thousands. But what's more interesting about my collection is that each piece has kind of a really interesting story behind it. Some of these items are one of a kind, downright musical history, right? So if I'm going to be a museum, I have to be good, right? And so I've learned that if I'm going to do something in life, I do it really well. And so since I give free tours, I have to have things worth showing, right? So my goal is to wow people. And the minute they walk in the door, they are wowed. And then it takes 60 to 90 minutes to show them some really integral parts of Cyndi's history. So there are things from, stage, screen. I have demos, master reels. I have one of probably her first microphone from 1977. So I have things from, when she was just starting to today, right? Last month, Cyndi did what's called a closet closeout in Manhattan, and hundreds and hundreds of people showed up to purchase something from her wardrobe. So of course I flew to Manhattan, 19 degrees. It was crazy. Apparently not as bad as this weekend, but it was cold and I was miserable, but you do what you got to do to get some really great stuff. So I got her Glastonbury outfit for this trip.
Wow. That's a major, major concert. Usually, what, 300,000 or more in England when they do it?
I don't know, it was huge. It was huge.
Oh, it's huge. I mean, I've seen the ones with Duran and Bowie. I mean, everybody's anybody. Elton John. They've all been there, and that's a big deal. As was her in at the We Are the World, the Lionel Richie, Michael Jackson thing. That was pretty huge at the time for her to be, in that caliber with everybody on the planet at the time, because I had a party for the actual, the 1 day concert that was began in England, and then the second half was in Philly. And but when it debuted on MTV, just the song itself and the video, it was major, and my place was packed. My townhouse was packed with people to see that, and we had an all-day party for that. But she was in that echelon. Madonna wasn't there, but Cyndi was. And let me throw it to Evan here, but just the things you have too are priceless. So I hope these tours are by appointment, and that maybe you have some, friends there, because Evan and I and Russ being around wrestling, things tend to disappear, and you being like the world's greatest curator of Cyndi Lauper memorabilia and outfits and all this priceless stuff, we want it to all remain there. So Evan, let me throw to you.
Sure. I am a huge, huge music buff. I've been to thousands upon thousands of concerts over 50 years. Some of the greatest female vocalists I've seen live have been Patti LaBelle, Annie Ross from Lambert Hendricks and Ross, Coco Taylor in the blues, Laverne Baker. I go back, she was still touring in the 80s and 90s. Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan, Betty Carter, and Cyndi Lauper. She's great. She's great. But my question would be, out of all these great, great female vocalists, why Cyndi? Out of, so many great vocalists.
I wish I had a great story, but it was just kind of me kind of figuring out who I was at 14. And she just did a good job of representing the misfits, right? So I was listening to, because of my parents, I was listening to Olivia Newton-John and Eurythmics and Culture Club. I had some pretty cool parents. And I was just kind of getting into music at that time. and she just made a really big impression on me with the shaved hair and the makeup. I later met her makeup artist Patrick, and they hired him not as a makeup artist because they actually hired him as a painter. And I know from talking to him that he kind of at first wasn't up for the challenge, and he said, "I don't do hair and makeup." And they said, "You're perfect. We want you to come in and paint this artist."
Mm.
So that's what really brought me in, was this look of, and she calls it her war paint. She wasn't there to be pretty. She was there to shock people. And, she kind of drew us all in as kind of this weird girl, but she was actually brilliant and funny. And she found a way to get our attention and then keep our attention, right? So she had this 4-octave range voice. Every time you see her on TV, she's doing something wild and crazy. And then she really kind of, I think, was responsible for the rock and wrestling connection. So, she eventually, I'm sure, will be inducted into the Wrestling Hall of Fame. So the whole wrestling thing was a lot of fun, right? So, as a kid in high school, I wasn't, at least, going out and having a lot of fun and going to parties. I wasn't popular. I was a dork and I was a misfit. And so that appealed to me. But she was actually celebrated for that. And she was liked and, really supported by all these other misfits. So she's in the ring with, like, Mr. T and Hulk Hogan and Liberace. It was just like,
Yeah.
it was a mess, and I loved everything about her messiness.
I'm gonna put somebody on your radar you may not be familiar with. Just Friday night, they had a documentary on the avant-garde jazz artist Sun Ra, and his female lead vocalist June Tyson. Nobody sounded like her, and Sun Ra claimed he was from Saturn and sent to Earth to save us. So there's somebody out there even more than Cyndi Lauper. And I love Cyndi Lauper. Last time I saw her live, and I've seen her several times, she opened for Rod Stewart. She blew him off the stage. She blew him off the stage. I mean, it wasn't even close. And she was the opening act. So she's a phenomenal singer, performer. And I'm jaded, believe me. I just saw, it's called the Four Queens Tour. Patti LaBelle, Gladys Knight, Stephanie Mills, and Shaka Khan all on the same show. So I've seen some great.
Wait, Ev, how was Shaka? Did she bring it?
Shaka was awesome.
Okay.
Patty's about 80% of what she was. She's in her 80s. Still great. Stephanie Mills hasn't lost a note. Gladys is slowing down a little. She's in her 80s, but
late 80s too.
I think she's like 84 or somewhere in the 81. Yeah. But anyway, my point being, I'm totally jaded, and Cyndi Lauper is just phenomenal, and she's not a kid anymore either. She's in her 70s. So yeah, and you see her live, you're gonna get your money's worth. So here's another question, then I'll pitch it back to Mike or Russ. What is the line between super fan and obsession? I mean, what is the healthy line? Because, for example, if I like a performer, I might have every album they've ever made, but I don't have a museum. So it's interesting what you've done, and I'm not saying this with any disrespect whatsoever, because you put in the time and effort to do something unique. So to me, that's art. So I'm saying this out of respect. But what is the line between art and obsession?
It's a vague, blurry line. As I said, it just kind of grew and grew, and I just find, for me, it's become less about Cyndi as a person and more about her legacy, right? It's about her character. In the 80s, Cyndi was a character, and I fell in love with that character. And then she eventually grew out of that, and she was finally, we'll say, more mature. And so you got to see who Cyndi Lauper is. But I missed the character, I missed the craziness of that caricature. But what I have found is that once I started collecting, um, at any point in her career, it was about getting what was available, and it became more about the hunt and to get something that nobody else has. So you get addicted to the pursuit of having something unique. So at this point, it's as strange as this may sound, it's actually less about Cyndi and more about the fans. I am now, doing this to basically just bring more fans into the fan community, connect us. It's a lot of fun when we go to concerts. A lot of the people will show up. We all know each other from being online. I give free tours. So when people come to Florida, they make a real effort to, come in and just spend a couple hours here. But I do have people who come in from everywhere just to see the extent of what I've done. And I think it's probably been within the last 5 years that it's just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And now the items are actually museum worthy. These are real artifacts now. So God forbid, I die anytime soon. I'm not sure where it's going. We haven't actually figured that out yet. But I could imagine it would end up probably at Julian's auction or something. There are some things that people would pay great money for, as have I. So for example, I'm the only fan who has an actual Cyndi wig, for example, right? So she's worn like fun costume wigs, one-offs, but this is a wig that she wore for 2 years straight. You don't get that unless you have connections, right? So sometimes I work with her team. Sometimes I'm getting things through designers. I'm not going to give you guys a whole tour, but I can kind of point out just a couple quick things. I have, the outfit she wore to the 50th anniversary of the Grammys. I have a VHS tape, the first time she was on stage with her band. They were playing at the time under the name of Loose Lips. They later changed it to Blue Angel. They changed out a bunch of members, and they actually made one album. But I have the VHS tape of them on stage at Trax in New York City for the first time performing as a band. I mean, no one has stuff like this. I'm friends with one of her childhood friends who saved the equipment from their band. The first time Cyndi fronted a band, that was a band called Flyer. Ed Wenzel was bass guitar, and they're still friends to this day. But I have the microphone that she blew her voice out on. You hear the story of Cyndi was told she was never going to sing again because she ruined her voice. She was singing Led Zeppelin with no training. So that night she went to the hospital, and apparently after working with many doctors, they said, "You're shot, you're never going to sing again." That doesn't work for Cyndi Lauper. She's tough. So she went for all sorts of training, and then she got her record deal, and there she's so unusual. So, to have the mic that she lost her voice on is pretty crazy. And again, I wouldn't have the contacts without primarily Instagram. Instagram's the way to go.
Mike?
I'm going to throw to Russ in a second, but I just want to say, you remind me a lot of like Debbie Reynolds, putting aside the fact that she was, this amazing superstar, collected from like day one in the 40s memorabilia from film that would just get tossed out, and did something very similar to where she was trying very hard to get a Vegas, a huge museum, which WWE would try to do, and they failed. They tried to get hers when she ran out of funds because it's very costly to do what Joe does. And we're thankful for that because, like all the stuff that Debbie had was priceless, as is the Cyndi Lauper artifacts. And it's more about, what he's doing for the planet and for people to appreciate, as opposed to, his not so much on the individual, the performer, but on all of this history and pulling it all together. And it takes devotion, hours, money, all of that. Let's do this several times throughout the show. Can you give the URL? So it's in Florida. how can people, come and visit you or go to the website if they want to donate things or money to help you? Because it does take a lot of, coin to do what you're doing in the love and support of this artist.
Thanks. Yeah, it is absolutely insane how much time and money it takes, but it's a labor of love. So you can find me at cindylaupermuseum.com. If you go to Facebook or Instagram, those are the main two, just under Cyndi Lauper Museum. And I have a pretty good snapshot on the website of the items here. I do need to update that periodically. But the goal is just to have things that people have never seen before, right? So Cyndi has not done an exhibition before. She occasionally will have an installment. Right now, she's got some really cool items on display at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland because she was just inducted, finally. And so I think she's got maybe 6 or 7 really amazing items there that you can see. Her most famous, iconic Girls Just Want to Have Fun dress is being shown at the Smithsonian. But she generally doesn't do these types of installments. And so the fans love coming here because they call it, like Cyndi Heaven, Cyndi World. So some people come to Disney World. A lot of fans come to Cyndi World instead of Disney World because literally you're just inundated. Every single thing in this entire establishment is Cyndi Lauper. So I cannot rent a commercial space to do this, nor would I even feel comfortable leaving all of these things there unattended. So it's kind of like I am the security guard of the museum, and we do private tours. We meaning me and the museum. We do private tours for free. And I would not be interested in having this go on any sort of tour. Some people have asked if I would do that, and I'm just not comfortable letting anything out of my sight. I'm a control freak.
Yeah, especially in a snowstorm like today. I have a point I want to make. There's very few vocalists that have their own sound. She's one of them. I could think off the top of my head, Corey Day from the Savannah Band. I mentioned June Tyson, Dr. Bazard's original Savannah Band. Nobody sounded like her. Annie Ross, Lambert Hendrickson Ross, June Tyson, Sun Ra Orchestra, Belita Woods from Parliament Funkadelic, George Clinton.
Annie Lennox too. Annie Lennox.
Yeah.
Nobody sounds like
Your
her.
own sound. And Cyndi Lauper has her own sound. What can you tell us about that? Because that is not easy where it's so distinctive and so different. What can you tell us about that?
I mean, you're right. The minute you hear her voice, you know who it is, right? So back in the 80s, for example, after the first album, we knew she was going to come out with a second album. But back then, without social media and the internet, you didn't know what was really going on until you heard it live. And I was at my parents' house because I was now 17, and we had a radio playing through the house. And the minute I heard her True Colors song, the track off her second album, I'm like, oh my God, clearly Cyndi's got new music. You immediately recognize the intonation, the inflection, and I am not an artist in any way. I'm not a musician, but she's got something unique. And I think that's what's allowed her to stay relevant all these years. I mean, she's been performing for 50 years. She's 72. She started probably, I would say, in the band circuit around 17. And, they say 40 years, but it's 50. And she still sounds great. Yeah. Now, you can't sound the way you do at 72 the way you did when you were 18.
Shaka Khan does. She still got it.
He is. In fact, I don't know much about Shaka, but I saw that one night she actually opened up. She didn't open, I'm sorry. She came out for one of the songs with Cyndi on Cyndi's farewell tour. And she looked great. And she sounded good. But I think you have to understand when you have an idol or somebody, you have to age with them. You have to understand that it's an instrument, but these people are getting older, and some of them retire gracefully, and some of them don't. And I think she's done well for herself to kind of start working her way out. But even though she did her farewell tour these past couple years, you can still see her. She's doing a Vegas residency starting in April. And hopefully, if it goes well, it'll be more than 1 week. Let's hope. But right now, she's doing end of April, beginning of May. If you want to see Cyndi in Vegas, this is her first residency. I think she'll probably perform till the day she dies. And honestly, just based on what I know about this, I don't think she knew what an amazing voice she had at first. She's talked about sometimes when she was younger, some sounds would come out that she wasn't expecting. She didn't plan on being a singer. She failed. Admittedly, she has said this many times. She has failed at everything she tried. She was a big old failure. I don't know the whole story, but she dropped out of school. She tried painting. She's tried everything. And definitely was not for the corporate world. And she just kind of found her way through music. And I think she was surprised by how good her voice actually was. And she took it seriously, and she still trains. I know that she's had this vocal coach forever. And I think that's smart, because if you don't take care of it, you lose it.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Of all the memorabilia that you have there, since we are a wrestling show, do you have anything that relates to our time with the WWF and WrestleMania?
That's a great question. Is it Russell or Russ?
Yeah, Russ.
Russ, I wish I did. And maybe I need to start reaching out to the wrestling community, because I would say that the museum, as far as the collection goes, that's probably the portion of her life I have the least representation, which is a shame. And
That's why we have you. That's why I invited you, because the second half, that's all we're going to be talking about, wrestling and Cyndi.
Love that. Yeah, I don't really have anything. I saw that some things went up per Rowdy Roddy, and I thought about getting it, and then I thought, no, that's not fair. Let the wrestling fans get a hold of his stuff.
We know all the collectors. I mean, if you ever wanted, we could probably find you some Cyndi Lauper wrestling stuff.
We'll start with Kitty Piper, the Kitty Toombs. That's the real last name. I've been in touch. I've known her decades, and spoke at his memorial and his funeral. And she's now, all the kids have all flown the coop. They're all over the country now. Her daughter, who was doing a Roddy, when she first started wrestling, Ariel, was doing sort of a Roddy tribute. But she probably has a ton of photos and things that that they did together. Obviously, Goonies wise, I was at Grauman's, I think it was, where they had that premiere, and when her song came on at the end, there was a lot of wrestling folks there that went nuts. So I guess we can get right into this. Russ, did you want to ask? Do you have Russ would probably ask, or I'll just throw that into his mouth, if you have a favorite piece. I think you were asked that by Lisa on the show. Do you have a favorite or favorite pieces of her, or everything is probably one of your?
Yeah, right. They're all your kids.
Your kids.
I would say it's tough. It keeps changing. I would say the most sentimental item is just a record that she signed to me. We had dinner together. And by the way, I don't just call Cyndi Lauper. Everything is done through her people. But I actually won a contest. So I actually had dinner with her one day, and we spent about 45 minutes. And so she signed a record after dinner that said something like, "Joe, dinner was such fun." And so that is huge to me, because the average person doesn't get to spend that kind of time with their idol. You don't have dinner with Cyndi Lauper. So that's.
I have to ask, what did she order? What did she order?
It's funny because it was at a venue that she was performing at. Boy George was opening up, so I didn't get to see him until after the show. So we didn't have dinner with him, but she has a cook. So, she's, very health conscious. And I don't know to what extent is what, but I know that she deals with psoriasis, and she's always trying to stay
Right.
thin. She always looks great, and her voice. So she's always kind of very limited, I think, in what she eats. So the rest of us had, what the crew was having, which is, the slop that they just kind of put out for everybody. And then the chef came out and gave Cyndi hers separately. So even in that moment, Cyndi was the head honcho, and I loved it.
You mentioned Boy George, so this thought just popped in my head. Singers like Cyndi Lauper, Boy George, Dusty Springfield, who was great, Judy Garland, who may have been the greatest. They were iconic in the gay community, and not all of them were gay. So what's your take on that?
And Cindy's brought people around the world together. It's like everybody's a collective, doesn't matter what frame or whatever you come from, color, creed, sexuality, none of it matters. She just links
Exactly.
people together, which is a hard thing to do.
I don't know how she does it, but she, as part of the gay community, I'm an openly gay guy. I figured this out when I was about 14, and that's when this all kind of came together for me. She spoke to people who were, marginalized, not accepted, and we felt like this was somebody who accepted us. Even if we didn't know her, she was our beacon. We felt safe with her. And so it was interesting to see that progress as her career continued. She became more and more vocal about the LGBT community. But yeah, she was talking about, she wasn't using maybe some of the language, but she often was talking about her friends. We knew that she was an ally from the very beginning. She says that she's friends and family because her sister's a lesbian. But Cindy's married. Has been married, I think, for like 22 years. She has a son. I asked her once, I said, this song, Brimstone and Fire, which was like just this kind of deep cut on one of her albums. It's about a girl who has a crush on another girl, and she's making her spaghetti because that's all she can make. And I said, so like, did you ever like, think about being with women? And she said, oh, no, no, no. That was a song for my friends. So she's always thinking about the community, and I think she's, done such a good job as far as making it safe to talk about. Madonna was doing some stuff at that time too, but now Cyndi has her own charity, True Colors United, specifically to help the LGBT community, specifically homeless kids who tend to be, we'll say, more apt to be kicked out. So she's always looking out for the kids, and we've known that.
Do you do anything in conjunction with that? Do you do anything in conjunction with
Well, he's doing all this counseling and helping tons of folks.
Well, I'm not involved in any way with any of her projects, so I don't work with like True Colors United or anything like that. As fans, sometimes we make donations, but my work is actually with, as a licensed mental health counselor and certified sex therapist, I work primarily with couples who are having problems and people who are having issues with, self-acceptance. I work a lot with the trans community and just trying to help them figure out, what they're doing and, where they're going. So I kind of ended up working in that field for another whole reason, but it all connects. And so part of what we talked about at dinner that night was, how she's working with the community and how I'm working with the community in totally different ways. But it's nice to know that she's looking out for these communities who don't always have all the privileges, and she's an advocate for, mental health and kids' rights and breast cancer, and like she's always got something that.
And as psoriasis, she did all of those ads and she helped with it, even though I think it was for a specific med, but a lot of sufferers probably sought treatment because, hey, if Cyndi Lauper is doing this, maybe I can find something to help me, because that's annoying, horrible condition to go through, depending on the severity and all of that.
Yeah, I think she empowers people who are dealing with all sorts of things, right? When I talk to these other fans, they all have a story about how she drew them in. And it's usually about a feeling of acceptance and safety. She's got a warmth about her.
Well, one of the things I found that she was very unique about her is that she brought forward that late 50s, early 60s kind of post Art Deco, post atomic chic stuff, which doing that in the 80s was actually really cutting edge because people were getting away from the 50s and they didn't want to be reminded of it. They wanted to be, more into, the ultra modern scene. But she was able to go retro with that. And in that sense, I felt that she always sort of portrayed at first, she was kind of a
Well,
human
she
cartoon
reminded me at the
character.
time when we first discovered her, and that brings us into the wrestling, like of a Betty Boop cartoon come to
Yeah,
life, but with
cartoon
this
character,
terrific,
like,
yeah, with this
yes.
terrific voice. So let's get into it because I want to talk about Evan and I, going to that. But in a nutshell, she has Hulk Hogan as her bodyguard at the Grammys, and then that leads into the whole. I don't know how many months, Evan. Was it 7, 8 months, 6, 7 months? She's,
Build up to the Rock and
Vince
Wrestling
McMahon is
thing.
going national. Russ, let me talk. Vince McMahon is going national. She is part of it. There would not be this $1 billion TKO owned of Ultimate Fight and WWE if it was not for Cyndi Lauper and Mr. T, and specifically more so her because she was a regular on the WWF TV, the Superstars syndicated Saturday TV on the Piper's Pit and doing all the stuff with Captain Lou Albano, having him in her first big music video, and then subsequent ones, and then that whole stuff. And so, to your understanding, though, was it Dave Wolf, who I don't think she ever married, but they were together, and he was the manager who got her into that? Because Evan, you remember one of my first questions to her when we interviewed her for God knows how long, because we were there a couple hours early before anybody else got there, any press at that Virgin Megastore in San Francisco, that big opening, was I said, did you not feel like I was worried that you might put your career at risk because she seemed to be going head to head. Who's going to be the more popular 80s female star, Madonna or her? And wrestling, that connotation had always been you didn't really talk about it, but she made it cool to where her involvement at that first WrestleMania, you have Danny DeVito, Billy Crystal, Andy Warhol, all of these big people, not just the ones that Vince McMahon paid, but the ones that were there and interviewed on camera backstage. So she made it cool, and she definitely belongs, as I've nagged Ben Brown and others at WWE to put her into that. That Hall of Fame is kind of meaningless. There's no physical one like you have. Yours has more cred than WWE's because it's in name
It's
only.
real.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's real. And so I asked her that, and do you remember what she said? I have to dig up, and I should send that to Joe because it's that's all we talked about was her and wrestling for however long
She
it was, 50.
basically, I'm paraphrasing because it was 30 years ago. I don't remember word for word, but she basically said that by getting involved in wrestling, it was putting the music career kind of in jeopardy because wrestling was looked down upon as lowbrow for the most part by the general public. And so she took a chance, and it worked because it just everything blew up
Well, the
in a
MTV
good
thing, the
way,
thing
in a
that they
good
did
way.
that wasn't the WrestleMania, the brawl to settle it all, where it was an actual match with Hogan and Piper instead of the tag thing, and then the Wendy Richter with Cyndi manager on MTV. It got I think those still has the highest ratings MTV has ever had, including their video music awards and all of that stuff. So that thing from MSG, Madison Square Garden, that catapulted it.
I was
Vince.
at Madison Square Garden when they set up the whole angle. They give Dick Clark comes out and there's this plaque. Anytime you see a plaque in wrestling, it's going over somebody's head.
Yeah.
And there's Cyndi Lauper. And as an old school fan, I go back to the early 70s. It's like you saw this was the bridge to something new. This was a whole different era in wrestling, and Cyndi Lauper was instrumental. She was right there with it, and it wouldn't have been as big without her because she had the credibility, the pop star, rock star,
But she was also
credibility.
comfortable hanging out with weirdos, with people who
And
are,
wrestlers are weirdos. Yeah.
yes, she didn't mind
Dudes in
hanging out.
spandex, but she was involved and had to do storylines and had to sit with Piper and take Lou, who I think she and her mom were very close to, Captain Lou Albano, who I'd known decades before that, and tried to train me to become a wrestler. But she had to pretend, listen to Lou putting down women and
Yeah.
using the typical wrestle speak of, oh, you guys belong in the kitchen, not near wrestling, and then hearing, because that was like so not Roddy Piper or Rod Toombs in real life, but they're doing that shtick. And she just elevated that thing, and I think she was far more important than Mr. T. He's kind of an afterthought. He was in the first WrestleMania, and then the second one, which was horrible, the boxing match with Roddy Piper. But Cyndi, the short period of time, I mean, she gave it 1,000%. And Joe, were you aware that, I mean, she's so instrumental and it's like so insulting she hasn't been put in that Hall of Fame to where we continue nagging, uh, that thing is going to be in Vegas. I don't know. She's probably not going to go in this year. And we thought she'd go into the Wrestling Hall of Fame well before the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And she was too long overdue to go into the Rock and Roll Political Hall of Fame. But thank God she went in last year, and that was great and well deserved.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of good points there. I had no interest in wrestling, and outside of Cyndi Lauper, I really still don't. But I have to say, since I was keen to watch anything and everything she was doing, I was now watching wrestling, right? And so I knew who these people were that I had never heard of. I think it was amazing that she brought all these young kids to wrestling, and then, wrestling brought those to Cyndi. And so it was like this really interesting, you know, combination of pop culture, two completely different worlds that actually fit really well together. And she's talked about this in her book, her autobiography, and then later in her documentary called Let the Canary Sing. It was really Dave Wolf that was the wrestling fan, like you said, Mike. And Cyndi got on board with it because they were having trouble getting the Girls Just Want to Have Fun song to hit. And they started playing that at wrestling matches. And it really just kind of took off. And then they decided that we need her to manage a wrestler. And I just thought it was great. And at the time, you have to remember, I was 14, 15. I thought this was real. I believed all of it. And it was just interesting to see, who I thought Cyndi was going to be sweet. And then, she's hitting Rowdy Roddy Piper and she's hitting, Captain Lou. And at the time, it was probably good that I didn't know it was fake because I wouldn't have liked it as much. But I was convinced that this was real. And so it was interesting to see that whole culture embrace her and vice versa. And I do think that she's overdue for Wrestling Hall of Fame as well. I don't know what's taken so long. I put my time into helping advocate. I did a campaign to do it was called Induct Cyndi Lauper. And so myself and a lot of fans, we worked on that campaign for 3 years. The experts on the Rock Hall estimated that Cyndi wouldn't have gotten in until 2038.
Yes.
But we did everything. We did letter writing. We did all sorts of art and social media. We killed it. I think we really sped up the process. So I was glad to see that happened, and I'm just waiting for the wrestling next because that's a shame that she's not. That's an insult that she's not in there.
But it was a lot of Vince McMahon now got excommunicated from the company he helped create with the help of Cyndi and Hulk Hogan. Those are probably the two most important things. Cyndi and Hulk Hogan to a greater extent because he was the performer 365 days a year for that. But she and he were the building blocks for this rock and wrestling connection and what we have now known as WWE. They had to go through a legal thing with the World Wildlife Federation. That's how they lost the F in the WWF and had to go WWE around 2001. But wrestling, don't ever say it's fixed to wrestlers. It's choreographed. It has predetermined finishes, but it goes back to actually the Civil War, where they had the soldiers were trying to entertain each other and they'd have fake matches. Some believed that they were real and they'd bet on it. And then it got way more popular in 1880s France. And then it has its roots in carnival stuff to where the secret language wrestlers use is called Carney from the Carney days, like 1890s, 1910 in the U.S., which is sort of a pig Latin. Like the word drop kick would be Dries up Kiezik. And they can communicate like right in front of fans, and the fans don't know what they're saying, where they're telling the other guy what moves are coming up next, for example. But let me have you come in a little bit on this. That's why I think she's important. And Vince McMahon would just pick, it's a lot of politics. If you've ever heard the rock and roll, I'm sure you have, Steve Miller, when he got his acceptance, and he completely trashed at his speech, trashed them for being political. That you should hear because he is telling the truth for a lot of these halls of fame. It's a lot of money, and they force or he was claiming that the inductees have to buy a lot of $30,000 seats or a whole table, so they have to cough it up, even if they may not be financially, it's not something for their fiscally that they should be doing. And it's even more goofy. At least Vince McMahon is out of it now. His son-in-law is running that company, WWE. And I was at the original corporate, but they have a new corporate office now that supposedly looks like a stadium, Evan. This thing where they had the computer game debut, the press thing last week. I couldn't go. I wasn't about to go out there and tackle that weather. But she did come back to in the 90s, or maybe it was the 2000s. She came back on a WWE Raw program, when they had every week they had a different general manager, from Trump to Betty White to all of these different people, Pee Wee Herman. And in fact, Cyndi was on, I don't know if I told you this in emails, she was on when Pee Wee Herman's the night before his Saturday morning show debuted. And I had seen him in the Groundlings and saw him when he did the Pee Wee Herman show on Sunset Boulevard at the Roxy Theater, which was like a sort of an R-rated thing. It had nothing to do with a kids show with Phil Hartman playing Captain Carl and all that stuff. But she was on that special, the Pee Wee special with Roddy Piper. She sang because she did his song, the opening song to the Pee Wee's Playhouse. So they had some ties there. And she was at some event that I took pictures of, so I need to get you these shots because he was elected the unofficial mayor of this great North Hollywood area, Melrose, Beverly Boulevard, and she was at that thing. So I think she and Paul Rubens had like a long time friendship. But on his CBS special, that's online anywhere. Have you seen it or did you watch it at the time? Because she was like the featured act with a number of other people and some Roddy Piper was on the thing because they were doing that tie-in the WWF cartoon show, the Hulk Hogan rock and wrestling cartoon thing. I don't know if she voiced anything in that because they didn't even have the wrestlers voice their own.
I don't think so.
But she was on this Pee Wee special. Do you know the one I'm talking about? To talk.
In the Pee Wee special. But yeah, I mean, I knew they were good friends, and he was at her wedding, and they were tight.
Yeah, she's on that special. It was a 1 hour or a 90-minute thing to introduce the show that debuted the very next day, Pee Wee's Playhouse, and it was one of those featured on there. Ev, do you have some more thoughts on this? So it's sort of a grassroots thing. I've talked about it on the Sirius XM Busted Open show. Dave LaGreca's champion, trying to get her in there because it's way long overdue. But just know that she has this impact, and people in wrestling who come in all, again, creeds and colors and everything, belief systems and stuff, they all love Cyndi. They know that she is that, one of those pillars for this company that they love that's charging them $4,000 for a ringside seat now because WWE was bought out by this money first TKO company, and where they're jacking up the prices and people are getting very upset. But Ev, some
I
thoughts
have one
on
final question. When people talk about the greatest female vocalist of all time, many times they'll say Aretha Franklin, If they're older, they may say Judy Garland. Where do you rank Cyndi Lauper? Not as a character. She is a great singer. Where do you rank her among the great singers?
Mm. Oh, that's so hard. Um, since I don't know much about music and I'm very selective in what I listen to, I have maybe 5 vocalists I listen to.
Who are
Um,
they?
I'll tell you, but I would say to answer your first question, I would say probably Celine Dion is probably number one. Now, here's the thing. I don't love her, but I think she's got an incredible voice. Um, I love Sarah Brightman. She's one of the 5 I listen to.
Mm-hmm.
That crossover from, Phantom of the Opera to Popera. I think she's incredible. I listen to Alanis Morissette. I really like Lady Gaga, and of course now Chappell Roan. Madonna was amazing, and I saw recently this documentary. I think it was from 2024, and it's on Marquee TV. God, it really shows how these people in the 80s changed history. So Cyndi and Madonna, they don't get a lot of respect maybe from the younger generations, which is kind of sad. I work sometimes with younger people, and I have one picture of me and Cyndi in my office, and they're like, "Is that your wife?" And I'm like, "Oh my God,
Yeah.
you guys don't know who Cyndi Lauper is." It's kind of
Yeah.
sad. So I have to educate the young people. Nowadays, there's so many artists that there's not these iconic people who come out. Anyway, God, as far as where she would rank, I mean, she's definitely in the top 50 of all time. I would like to say top 10, but I don't think she would, per like Rolling Stone or anybody who would be making that determination. I'd like to think she'd make the top 30.
Okay,
Oh,
that's
Joe, before we
fair
let you
enough.
go, can you take your laptop and show
Sure.
us some items? Because when he gets up close, you can see him very clearly, and it's so
What
cool.
is that TV behind you?
So speaking of like doing retro stuff, I got an old TV from the 50s,
Wow.
and I put
Look at that.
well, I didn't do it. I know somebody who does this. So he cut it in half and he put this video of Cyndi in there. This was when she opened in Paris. So she did the HBO special Cyndi Lauper in Paris, and so that promo jacket is here. And so it's
Wow.
very, very hard to get anything that Cindy's worn in the 80s. She's holding on to those things. And hopefully we'll get to see some sort of exhibition one day. But down here, and you have to remember, I'm just going to show you the downstairs. This is pretty great. So the Time After Time video featured Cyndi Lauper in a diner in Ledgewood, New Jersey. And that diner has since been torn down. So the son of the owner of the diner, Tom Jr., was the one who talked his dad into letting them rent the diner. And before it was torn down, he made sure to send me something from that video since
That's
it's
the
my
stole
favorite.
that she sat on?
She didn't sit on that. She actually sat in a booth. The booth is gone, but so just to have something from the diner is pretty special to me. Cyndi doesn't release her video outfits, but I have one. This is not going to be one of her hits, but Cyndi does like to repurpose. And so this is the vintage dress, probably from the 50s or 60s, that she used in her video Above the Clouds. This is an example of a team effort. I gave Cyndi some things that she wanted. I don't know if I can do this properly. I guess we want to do it this way. These are lyrics to Time After Time.
Oh, wow.
And
Wow.
he hand wrote those specifically for the museum because I did a poll and asked the fans, what's something you want to see here? And they all said lyrics. So made that happen. Sometimes I find something that she needs or wants, usually photos that she never got. And so I reach out, and that's how we usually come up with something pretty good, a pretty good deal. Sometimes I work with the designer. Cyndi may borrow something, and then it's returned to the designer.
Oh, those
So
gloves. Look at those gloves.
those are hands, and then what I'm
The
trying to show you
hands.
here is rings. So that ring, that looks like
Oh,
an almond. She wore that to receive her Grammy for Kinky Boots. This is the thing I just got this month, sorry, at the closet closeout. So this here, I'm not good at this. This is the outfit that she wore to Glastonbury.
That's
So
one of the biggest, if not the biggest, music festivals in the world.
yeah, I think so. There's the mic I was telling you guys about.
And we
Um,
should say too, like Cindy's on her way to being an EGOT with Kinky Boots. That was a huge deal, getting an award. And she was so major with that.
Absolutely, yeah. I think she just needs the
Oscar or
Oscar.
some kind of Academy Award. Maybe the documentary she can get something for that. Then
We
she's
can
in.
hope. So I have all sorts of outfits from photo shoots. Um, I have some things that the average fan may not recognize, but there are headdresses. Um, this is
Joe,
up.
you really should charge for this because if we're going to be sending you wrestling people who absolutely adore Cyndi Lauper, you need to charge something or at least have a contribution bowl so people can say, hey, I love this place. I should give this guy some money to continue these efforts.
That's a nice idea, and I'm not opposed. I usually just say, hey, do me a favor. If you want to make a donation, just donate it to Cindy's charity. I'm
Wow.
also trying to make sure that I don't get in trouble um, looking like I'm collecting money because
Yeah.
I'm definitely not connected to Cyndi. She's not a part of this project. So I just do it for fun. But yeah, if
I
people,
have one final question for you, and
yeah,
that is if you could get any piece of Cyndi Lauper memorabilia in the world, what would you want the most?
that's a great question, Russ, and I think about this one all the time. There is the dress that she wore in the Time After Time video. It's kind of an ugly dress that she wore probably from maybe the 50s because she always was doing the retro. And she wore it many, many times on different shows, interviews, and I can't really
Like
show
a
you.
polka dot dress or something? I'm just trying to remember from my own memory.
Well,
Like
go watch
like
everybody should go watch and enjoy
time after
Cyndi
time.
Lauper all over
I,
again.
is time after time your favorite song of hers?
Yeah,
Sounds like it.
definitely my
Not
favorite
not
song.
True Colors because she changed the world with True Colors. That was a big. People really may not have taken her too serious. They should have after Girls Just Want to Have Fun. But when she did some of those, and then big movie deals, like doing a James Bond film when she did the Goonies beloved track, and then the music video full of wrestlers. We all dug that. I mean, that's she has this bond you may not be aware of. Wrestling people absolutely love her. She's like the first lady for music and wrestling,
That was the
obviously.
first two-part video in history. She was the first one to do closed captioning for a video. She's always
Ah,
thinking
Wow.
of like, how can I do something different? How can I bring attention to these different groups that are potentially being ignored? So yeah, she's just a great person all the way around. But it would be the Time After Time dress. Um, and as far as True Colors, yeah, it's amazing. I love it. Absolutely love it. Um, she didn't actually write that song. Time After Time she co-wrote, and She Bop she co-wrote. But a lot of those first hits, it was her interpretation of these other songs, and she was a genius at reinventing them, changing the lyrics, changing the sound. So she's an interpreter, and I love that she takes something and she completely, transforms it. My second favorite song of all time of hers is a deep track called "Hatful of Stars." It's
Hmm.
a ballad. It's not something that you might hear on the radio, but it's a really sweet love song, and I think that's probably my second favorite of hers. But yeah, she's got these incredible hits that everyone recognizes, and of course, you're going to hear that when you see her on tour. Um, so if I'm plugging anything, I would say go see Cyndi at her Vegas residency in uh,
Is that
last.
at Caesars? Is that the place that, yeah, that's the big dome that Celine Dion started and
Yeah,
got that going, and other artists followed.
and what
yeah.
city in Florida are you in?
I'm in Orlando, so I'm about
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
45.
let's have you plug everything. Now it's your time to
Yeah,
plug the website and social media, anything and everything you want to plug.
I
or
appreciate it.
Taka?
Yeah, if you just want to get a glimpse into what I have here, just go to cindylaupermuseum.com. If you want to be a part of the fan community, and we have a good group of people, lots of nice people who help each other out, people who donate things here, that's Cyndi Lauper Museum on Facebook. Networking, always, I always say Instagram is the way to network with not just fans, but celebrities. And that's also Cyndi Lauper Museum. That's on Instagram. But at this point, you're not going to see Cyndi perform much. She's going to do, now that she has retired from like touring, she's going to do one-offs, right? So you're going to see her in Vegas in April and May. Occasionally, she might do a date here and there. I suspect we'll get to see her do some things on Broadway. So I don't think she'll ever retire, but I think the opportunities will be less and less. So if you ever get a chance, like you said, Evan, you got to see her live. She's just, an amazing performer in every way. It is interesting. My goal is to get to 50 Cyndi concerts by the time I die. I'm at 44, I think. And that's not a lot of shows because I'm spending all my time and money on the memorabilia. But I have friends who have seen her between 200 and 500 times. They go over and over and over and over. And so that's not what it's about for me. Mine is about just documenting her, we call it her herstory instead of history. And yeah, I would love to have some more wrestler representation.
Well, this
here.
is where people can come in. Evan might have even taken pictures, but anybody out there that went to any of the WWF tapings, the Superstars syndicated show tapings that Cyndi was on, or the Madison Square Garden, either the Brawl to Settle It All that was on Free MTV, or WrestleMania 1, which I think was, or even the later from the maybe 20 years ago when she was on Raw. Anybody has photos or memorabilia, gimmicks as we call them, and can get it to Joe's, museum, that would be of help.
Promos. So I've gotten a couple promos from like War to Settle the Score, Best Bartender. She did a lot of really fun stuff back then. And I was too young to go see it. But yeah, I missed it. I missed all that. So I would love to have a version of that here.
Yeah, so anybody that can help out.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show tonight.
Guys, I really appreciate about your experiences with Cyndi too.
Yeah.
Well, we thought, Evan and I mean, that was the first thing I said when we were done, was that's the nicest celebrity I've ever talked to that had no agenda and gave us the time. We just went right into her face and said, can we interview you about wrestling? And that's all we talked. We talked about.
Yeah, the interview wasn't set up. We just approached her, and she just did it on the spot. She couldn't be any nicer. Yeah.
Wasn't that the album that she was also? When did Hatful of Stars come out? Was it like 2000? Or no, it had to have been 1998 or something like that.
One. And yeah, she's such a down-to-earth person. She's so approachable. This is the thing is I've met her so many times over the years that I'm definitely not obsessed. Like you said, I'm not a stalker, but I'm a collector, and collectors are obsessive in collecting. But yeah, as a New Yorker, I'm originally from New York. I think New Yorkers are the nicest people. She's New Yorker through and through. They're real people. You know exactly where you stand with them. I just think New Yorkers are pretty great. And so that was another reason I attached myself to her, as we were fellow New Yorkers.
Perfect.
Well, you could have attached yourself to a better person, and what an important person on so many levels she is. Humanitarian. She's a great, we love her. And wrestling people, as you will see, hopefully they will start sending you stuff. And I've got to get out my photos. Ev, did you happen to take any pictures at those WWF?
You're the professional photographer, not me.
Well, I wasn't there for any of that, but if you saw that in person, the whole setup for it.
Yeah, at the Garden, but I was just sitting there as a fan. It wasn't like I was shooting ringside.
Well, thank you so much, Joe, for being on the show. If you have any new developments, we'll have you back on as a guest.
I'm going to keep in touch with Joe. And Joe, thank you for all you do too, because people really should thank you. So that's the Cyndi. Give us the URL one last time. CyndyLaupermuseum.com.
CyndyLaupermuseum.com. yeah, that's just look me up there, and you can get me through any of those websites and or profiles. Easy to find me, I promise.
All
All right,
right.
everybody. Combate
Good night,
kudasai.
everyone.
Domo arigato gozaimashite.
Thank you, Joe.
Guys,
Thanks,
good night.
Joe.
Take care.
Good night, guys.
Yeah.
Stick around for